During my night shifts at Riverside General Hospital, I often felt fatigue creeping in. I'd been a nurse for a decade, but these particular nights blurred into something darker. The hospital was built in the 1970s, and even though I knew the place, the white walls and flickering lights always set me on edge. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One night, I heard a thumping sound echoing down the corridor outside room 213. I thought it might be the wind or a loose window. But that sound tugged at me in a way that felt wrong. I stepped out of the nurse's station. My heart raced as I walked toward the noise. Each step felt like I was being pulled to it, like something was trying to escape. When I reached room 213, the thumping stopped. I felt a chill run down my spine. I shook my head and walked back to the nurse's station. Over the next few shifts, I noticed patients waking up in terror. They claimed they saw a figure at the foot of their beds. I tried to calm them down, but each time I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What if they weren't just seeing things? One night, I spotted a crumpled note by a patient's bed. It was a messy scrawl, full of jumbled words. I stared at it, trying to make sense of it. Was it a message? I walked away while my mind raced with thoughts. As I passed the nurse's station, I caught my reflection in the window. My eyes looked darker, sunken. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself. With every shift, the air felt thicker. I started doubting my own mind. Was I losing it? Or was something really watching me? I stood outside room 213 again one night when I heard the thumping once more. Hello. I called, my voice barely above a whisper. The noise fell silent, replaced by a heavy quiet. I shivered and took a step back. Nothing felt right. Then I saw a figure flickering in my peripheral vision. It stood at the end of the hallway, but when I blinked, it vanished. My breath caught in my throat. I felt fear creeping in, a tightness that made it hard to breathe. What were the patients really seeing? I couldn't ignore it. I needed answers, but fear told me to stay away. I thought about the notes, the patient's terror, the figure. It couldn't be real, could it? On another shift, I stood again outside room 213. The thumping returned, stronger this time. I called out again, feeling my voice quiver. Then I heard a soft whisper. It sounded like my name. I froze. My heart raced as I stood there, unsure of what to do. What was haunting Riverside General? Why did it seem to be fixated on me? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pulled into a nightmare that wouldn't let me go. My shifts became a cycle of dread and uncertainty, always leaving me with more questions than answers. And I still don't know what was in that hospital, lurking in the shadows. The next night, I arrived at the hospital feeling heavier than usual. I couldn't stop thinking about the whisper calling my name. It taunted me as I settled into the nurse's station. My colleagues bustled around, completely oblivious to the creeping dread constricting my chest. I noticed the chart for room 213 was marked as a high observation case. I glanced to see who was inside. Judging from the name on the bed, it was a man in his 50s, Mr. Collins, a recent admission suffering from severe respiratory issues. I'd taken care of him a few times before. He had always been pleasant, but his eyes told a different story tonight. They darted around the room, and I felt an involuntary shiver run through me. "Are you okay, Mr. Collins?" I asked gently as I approached his bedside. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then, he nodded, but his gaze flicked to the corner of the room, his expression twisting into fear. They're here," he whispered, almost inaudibly. "Who's here?" I pressed, my heart hammering. But he just shook his head, tears brimming in his eyes. As I turned away, the thumping echoed down the hall. It felt closer, like it was following me. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the room, ready to confront whatever was waiting for me. I ventured toward the noise. Each step felt heavy, as if the floor itself was trying to pull me back. Just outside room 213, the sound intensified, a repetitive thud that pounded against my eardrums. "Stop!" I shouted, the panic spilling over. My voice echoed down the corridor, and then everything fell silent. The quiet was suffocating. My breath quickened as I peered into the darkness ahead. That's when I saw it again, a fleeting shadow dart around the corner. My pulse raced. Was this real? I almost turned back, but something compelled me to move forward. As I reached the corner, a sudden burst of cold air enveloped me. I gasped and stumbled. And then I saw the crumpled note on the floor. Confused, I bent down to grab it. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The scrawl was more jumbled than before, but now it spelled out one word clearly: help. As I processed the message, a light flickered above, then plunged the hallway into darkness. I felt a presence behind me and whirled around, only to find nothing. But the air was charged, electric. I could almost hear my own heartbeat against the silence. Suddenly, from the darkness, that familiar whisper slid through the air again: help me. Panic coursed through me. I felt the urge to run, to escape this nightmare, but I couldn't. I had to know more. I glanced back to Mr. Collins, who might have the answers. But when I turned my gaze, he was no longer in his bed. The sheets were tossed aside, and the room lay empty. My breath hitched. Had he vanished, too? I rushed back to look for him, but my legs felt like lead. Where had he gone? And what was haunting this hospital? I needed to find out before it swallowed me whole, too. Just as I stepped back into the room, the thumping returned, more urgent this time. I was out of time. I felt as if the walls were closing in on me. The thumping grew louder, insistent, almost enraged. My instincts screamed at me to flee. But instead, I stood frozen, the empty bed looming over me like a specter. "Mr. Collins?" I called out cautiously, hoping for a response. Nothing but silence met my ears. Then, an unsettling thought struck me: what if he had seen something? I glanced around the room, my heart pounding as I searched for any sign of him. The flimsy curtains fluttered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. I backed out of the room, and the noise shifted, drawing me down the corridor. It felt like a summons, pulling me deeper into the hospital's heart. I followed the vibrations each step of the way until I stumbled upon the nurse's lounge. It was dark, the soft glow of a lone vending machine the only source of light. As I stepped in, the whisper jolted through me again, louder this time. "Help me." I turned, half expecting to see someone lurking behind me. I was alone, but I didn't feel it. The air felt thick, charged with tension. Then I saw it. A small pile of belongings sat in the corner: a watch, a pair of glasses, and a hospital bracelet labeled with Mr. Collins's name. My breath caught in my throat. Why were these here? I didn't remember him having any personal items with him. I rushed over, heart racing. They couldn't have just appeared. "This can't be happening," I whispered to myself. I fumbled to pick up the bracelet, the plastic cool against my fingertips. Just then, the lights flickered again, casting harsh shadows across the room. "Is someone there?" I asked, the note clutched in the other hand. The answer was in the oppressive silence. I hesitated, then felt compelled to look out into the hallway again. Suddenly, I heard its soft, almost imperceptible footsteps padding down the corridor, heading toward the stairwell. A shiver crawled up my spine. Who would be up at this hour? I stepped towards the sound, my hands clammy and my pulse racing. Every instinct told me to run, but dread kept my legs moving forward. I reached the stairwell door just as it swung open, revealing darkness descending beyond the threshold. I hesitated. Had I really heard footsteps? Or was this all in my mind? That's when I noticed the other end of the stairwell was not entirely dark. A faint light flickered just enough for me to see what lay below. The shadows shifted, and I caught a glimpse of something or someone slumped against the wall. "Mr. Collins?" My voice trembled as I called out. No reply. The figure didn't move. I took a cautious step down. "Hello." I felt ridiculous, speaking into the void. The air grew heavier, a tangible weight that pressed down on me. It was impossible not to feel that something was decidedly wrong. As I reached the bottom step, my heart sank. The figure was unmistakably Mr. Collins, but his eyes were wide open, staring blankly into space. I rushed forward to him, but before I could reach out, the flickering light abruptly cut off. Darkness engulfed me. Someone was whispering again. Help! The darkness closed in around me, and I was trapped, consumed by panic and fear. I stood frozen in the dark, the whisper echoing around me like a chilling wind. The world around me was pitch black, and my heart hammered in my chest. I couldn't see Mr. Collins, couldn't even tell if he was still there, slumped against the wall. Panic tugged at me, but I forced myself to breathe slowly. "Mr. Collins?" I called again, somehow needing his voice to cut through the darkness. Silence. I could feel the cold seeping into my bones. Every instinct told me to flee back up the stairs, but I couldn't leave him. In that moment, I felt a flicker of light, a brief, ghostly illumination that painted the wall nearby. I turned, but as quickly as it came, it vanished. "Okay, stay calm," I muttered to myself, trying to summon courage from within. I reached out, my fingers stretching into the blackness, searching for the wall. I needed to find a light switch, a way to dispel the night that pressed against me. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from above, making me jump. I stumbled backward, but I steadied myself, focusing on the sounds echoing through the stairwell. Was someone up there? I held my breath, listening intently. Then I heard it again. More footsteps, definite and heavy. Someone was coming down the stairs. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I ducked behind a rusty trash bin in the corner. The footsteps grew closer, and the whisper returned, "Help me." The voice was closer now, distinctly male, tinged with desperation. My heart raced as I strained to listen, pressing my back against the cold metal. Who spoke? Was it Mr. Collins? As I crouched there, the footfalls stopped. I bit my lip, trying to quell my fear, my mind racing. Maybe it wasn't Mr. Collins. What if it was someone else? Just as the thought crossed my mind, the flickering light sputtered to life again. I winced as it illuminated the stairwell, casting lethal shadows. I peered out from my hiding spot. The hallway was empty, but I could see Mr. Collins, still lifeless, his eyes now locked on me. Panic surged within me as I stood. I took a tentative step toward him. "Mr. Collins!" I shouted. "Wake up!" My voice trembled, fear clawing at me. But he didn't move. Then I heard a soft rustling behind me. I spun around just in time to see the door at the bottom of the stairwell creak open. A figure loomed against the light, silhouetted in shadow, watching me. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the stranger. They stepped forward, and I stumbled back, losing my footing. I fell to the ground, adrenaline coursing through me. "Help me," they whispered, now standing inches from me. My eyes widened as I took in their features. They looked vaguely familiar, someone from the past, someone I couldn't quite place. The room spun around me. "Who? What do you want?" I stammered, confusion swirling in my mind. That's when I realized, the figure was wearing a hospital gown. Everything inside me screamed. I scrambled backward, desperate to escape. But as I scrambled away, something brought me up short. I noticed a shining object on the floor, the hospital bracelet I had just seen in the nurse's lounge. And then the darkness yawned wide, swallowing me once more. I blinked back to reality, the edges of the dark room swirling into focus. My heart pounded in my ears as I fought to pull myself together. That eerie figure, the faint outline of a person in a hospital gown, was gone. I was alone again, but the chill in the air remained. Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I couldn't sit still. I forced my legs to move, crawling back toward the fallen bracelet. It lay gleaming under the soft light of the flickering bulb like a trapped star. I reached for it, my fingers trembling as they brushed the cool metal. It felt significant, a key I needed to unlock whatever mystery surrounded this place. Glancing back toward Mr. Collins, I suddenly felt an urgency to understand what had happened. Had he seen the figure? Had he experienced the same unsettling vision I just did? I scrambled upright, the bracelet clasped tight in my hand. I had to find him. I rushed over to where he sat. Mr. Collins. My voice wavered. I crouched beside him, searching for any sign of life. Please, wake up. But he remained still, eyes closed, breathing shallow. I could see the concern etched into his features even in the dim light. I needed help, but what if I was alone in this? The thought crept in like a shadow. Just then, the sound of footsteps returned heavy and deliberate. My heart raced anew as I glanced toward the stairwell. There it was again, that soft whisper, "Help me." This time, it was closer, more insistent. I turned, trying to contain my rising fear and focusing on the light. It flickered again, this time brighter, momentarily illuminating the stairwell. I half expected to see the figure back, but the staircase remained empty. Then I remembered. The nurse's lounge. The flashlight was still there. If I could just get there, I could make sense of everything. I needed to escape this oppressive atmosphere. "Stay with me, Mr. Collins," I whispered, heading toward the staircase. My footsteps echoed eerily against the tiled floor. I hesitated, looking back at him. If I left and he needed me, would I be able to live with that? Before I could decide, the whisper grew louder, almost pleading. "Help me." It rattled me to the core. This time, I felt an instinct to respond. Who was this person? The image of the figure lingered in my mind, haunting yet strangely familiar. I began to ascend the stairs, determination pulsing through me. If I didn't find the flashlight soon, I might not be able to face whatever lay ahead. Each step intensified my dread and curiosity. At the top, I paused, catching my breath. The hallway stretched out before me, bathed in the soft, flickering glow from the overhead lights. I could almost hear the deep thrum of my heartbeat again, echoing through the empty space. Then I noticed that a shadow shifted at the far end of the corridor. My stomach dropped. I wasn't alone anymore. "Hello?" I called, hoping to sound brave. No response. Just the sound of my breath mixing with the quiet hum of the hospital. Panic clawed at my insides. I needed to face whatever was coming. And then, the lights went out completely. The darkness swallowed me whole. I tried to blink, but it only made things worse. I was blind now, straining to hear anything beyond the sound of my own breathing. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating. My heart raced even faster. A point of light flickered briefly in my mind, the flashlight. I needed to find it. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm as I extended my hand out before me. My fingers brushed against the cold wall, and I found a little reassurance in its solidity. Just a few steps, I muttered to myself, inching forward. I took one careful step, then another, my palms trailing along the paint-scarred surface. Then I stopped. Above me, I heard a shuffling sound, followed by a soft gasp, as if someone had just inhaled sharply. My body tensed. "Who's there?" I croaked, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay strong. Nothing answered but the oppressive silence. I ventured further down the hallway, my heart hammering louder in my ears. I could picture Mr. Collins in the room below, vulnerable, and every second I wasted felt like a betrayal. Suddenly, a flicker of light appeared ahead. The emergency lights buzzed back to life, casting a weak glow that struggled against the shadows. I squinted, trying to make out what lay before me. And there, near the doorway of the lounge, I saw it, a figure, hunched over, silhouetted against the dim light. "Is someone there?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. I knew instinctively it was not the figure I had seen before, not the one in a gown. This one seemed too small, too hunched. Without waiting for a response, I took a hesitant step forward. The figure straightened, and I stopped dead in my tracks. It turned slowly, the light revealing a face I didn't recognize, but that sent a chill through my veins. It was gaunt, eyes wide and glazed, a face worn by sadness rather than madness. "Help me," it whispered again, the voice shaking and heavy with despair. "Who are you?" I asked, my stomach twisting in knots. "What do you need?" But it didn't answer. It just stood there, and I felt every ounce of resolve leave my body. The whole scene felt surreal. What was happening? At that moment, I heard a loud crash coming from down the hallway, something falling, clattering loudly against the floor. My focus snapped back to that echoing sound. I turned abruptly, my instincts urging me to flee, and there, just at the edge of the emergency light, I saw it, the flashlight, now lying on the floor, just out of reach. But the figure hadn't moved. It remained rooted in place, watching me, waiting. Fueled by panic, I dashed toward the flashlight, crouching down to grab it. But as my fingers brushed the cool handle, a sharp gasp cut through the air again. I looked back, and in that instant, the figure lurched forward. That's when I understood. I had to get out. I clutched the flashlight tight, flipping it on, the beam piercing through the darkness, revealing the hall once more. But the figure was gone. With a surge of fear, I turned back to the staircase, realizing I was about to face whatever horrors lay ahead. But as I started to move, another voice echoed behind me, low and chilling, "You can't leave yet." I froze, heart thudding against my chest. Something was very wrong. This was just the beginning. I spun around, flashlight trembling in my hand. The voice had come from nowhere, and the sound of it was tangible, pressing down on me. My breath quickened again. "Who's there?" I shouted, trying to project more confidence than I felt. No response. Just the stretching silence that felt almost alive, wrapping around me. I peered into the shadows, half expecting something to lunge at me. Instead, I saw that ghostly figure materialize again, but this time it was further down the hallway, just outside the light's reach. It stood there, still and silent, its outline faint against the darkness. "Help me," it croaked again, as if it had been waiting for me. I couldn't move. Was it trying to lure me in? Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I needed those answers. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice wavering. And just like that, the figure vanished again, as if it had never existed. Panic clawed at my throat. My heart raced, each thud echoing painfully in my ears. I had to find Mr. Collins. He was still down there. I sprinted toward the staircase, keeping the flashlight beam steady ahead of me. As I descended, the light flickered, drawing my attention to every corner of the medical floor. I surveyed the area, breathing heavily. It shouldn't be this quiet. Where were the night staff? Rounding the corner, I spotted the nurse's station, empty and disheveled. Papers were scattered across the counter, and the overhead lights flickered erratically. "Hello?" I called out, hoping for a reassuring response. Nothing replied but the soft hum of electricity. Feeling unsteady, I crossed to where the empty chairs sat, glancing nervously at the door that led to the patient rooms. I aimed the flashlight toward the hallway, making sure it didn't obscure my view. That figure could be anywhere, lurking just outside of sight. "Mr. Collins?" I shouted, the name feeling heavy as it left my lips. "Are you down here?" Just then, a noise echoed, a clattering sound coming from one of the patient rooms. I turned as the door creaked open slowly, the darkened space beyond filled with uncertainty. I could see shadows shifting within like they had a life of their own, an undeniable draw that pulled me closer. I stepped forward despite every instinct telling me to back off. Inside, an eerie sense settled into the room. Something was definitely wrong. A chill traced my spine. The room was dark, and the bed sheets were crisply made, but where was the patient? Then I saw a piece of paper on the bedside table. It was folded, the edges crisp. My heart raced, but I stepped in. As I reached for it, the air seemed to thicken, pressing against me with a warning. And just as my fingers brushed the paper, the door slammed shut behind me. A scream clawed at the edge of my throat. I turned to find the figure finally emerging from the shadows. It was closer now, face illuminated by my flashlight, and I felt frozen, unable to take another step backward. "What do you want?" I demanded, voice barely a whisper, as dread pooled in my stomach. It took a tiny step forward, and in a voice that echoed through the dim room, it simply said, "You should have never come here." My breath quickened. I had to escape. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, blinking against the darkness. Disoriented, I instinctively turned my flashlight back on, the beam slicing through the thick gloom. I was still in the patient room, but the figure was gone. I could hardly breathe, heart racing and ears ringing. What had just happened? Focus. I had to focus. I checked the door, panic rising again as I realized it was still shut tight. I should have been trapped, but I was already moving, pushing against the door with everything I had. It creaked open slowly, a bit reluctantly, and daylight spilled into the dim room, momentarily blinding me. I stumbled out into the hall, finding everything eerily still. I could barely process my own thoughts, let alone piece together what I had just encountered. "Mr. Collins?" I tried again, my voice trembling with uncertainty. Moving through the hallway, I was hyper-aware of the shadows, each flicky light casting unsettling shapes. I rushed past more patient rooms, glancing into each one. They were all empty. My anxiety bubbled over as I turned back toward the nurse's station, desperate for proof of life. And then I saw it. A small movement caught my eye near the end of the hall. Something darted behind a corner, quick and fleeting. It was either the remnants of my hysteria or someone was actually down there. "Hey!" I called out, stepping forward cautiously. "Is anyone there?" Nothing responded. I was certain I saw something, but now it felt like an illusion. Holding my breath, I peered into the next patient room. The sensation of being watched gripped me. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind me. I spun around, nearly colliding with a metal cart. It hadn't just tipped over, it looked like it had been pushed. My pulse quickened, and I jumped back as my flashlight flickered wildly, then went dark, plunging me into complete darkness once again. "Come on," I hissed, hitting the switch desperately. Nothing. Not even a flicker. The hospital was now a suffocating void around me, and I was utterly alone. A frigid shiver crept down my spine. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. There was no other choice, I had to find another exit. I felt my way along the wall, my fingertips brushing the cool, sterile surface, leading me toward the exit sign faintly glowing in the distance. But then I heard something, the faint sound of crying. It came from behind a door just to my right. I paused, torn. Curiosity clashed violently with trepidation. In this place, it felt wrong to check. Yet, I couldn't stop myself from reaching for the handle. I hesitated, what if it was just another trick? But the sound pulled at me like a magnet. I twisted the knob slowly, and the door creaked open, revealing a dim room. That's when I saw it. A figure hunched in the corner, their shoulders shaking, the light from the hallway catching the glimmer of tears streaking their face. And before I could even utter a word, they turned to me, eyes wide in panic. "You shouldn't be here." They gasped, and that's when I realized I recognized them. My heart dropped. It was Emily, a nurse I had worked with before. She was supposed to be off duty tonight. But before I could ask why she was here, the lights overhead began to flicker again, and the air changed. I felt that familiar weight returning, an all-consuming darkness spiraling from the corners of the room. I took a step back, barely able to breathe, and in that instant, I knew we were no longer alone. Emily's face twisted in fear, her voice trembling. "You don't understand, you need to leave. It's not safe here." "What are you talking about?" I managed to whisper, still absorbing the sight of her. "What are you doing here?" She glanced nervously over her shoulder, as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. "They know we're here. They're coming for us." Her eyes widened in terror, and I felt the same fear creeping up my spine. I scanned the room. The walls felt suffocating, pressing in on me. The flickering lights added to my sense of dread. "Who knows we're here? What is going on? There is something in this hospital." Emily's voice quivered as she spoke, and I could see the unsteady rise and fall of her chest. "Something evil." Before I could press her further, a loud crash resounded from the corridor, rattling the ventilation grates above us. My heart raced faster, and a chill settled deep within. I moved toward the door, unsure of what lay beyond. "Wait." She reached for my arm, but I pulled away, the urge to escape overpowering. "If you open that door, people might need help," I interrupted. "We can't just stay here." With a deep breath, I yanked the door open, bracing myself for what awaited. The hallway was dark and silent, shadows creeping in from multiple angles. "Stay close," I ordered Emily. We stepped out, the heaviness of the air wrapping around us like a thick blanket. The exit sign still glowed faintly in the distance, but the journey felt far more treacherous now. We began moving toward it slowly, our footsteps eerily quiet on the tiled floor. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the figure I had encountered before. Nothing was there, but an unsettling chill lingered. "What did you mean when you said they know we're here?" I asked Emily, trying to keep the panic from my voice. She swallowed hard, glancing back down the dark stretch. "There's been something happening. Patients disappearing. Some nurses, too. It's like they're taking them." "Taking them?" My voice barely rose above a whisper. "But how? Why?" "I don't know," she admitted, her voice choked. "But I felt it, too. It wanted me." My gut twisted. I wanted to dismiss her, to chalk it up to exhaustion or fright, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was telling the truth. Just then, I heard it again, the crying, louder this time, echoing through the vacant halls. I froze. "Do you hear that?" Emily nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "We should go back, please, let us go back." I shook my head. "Someone needs us. It could be another nurse, a patient. They might be in trouble." As we moved forward, the sound grew more intense, mingling with a low whisper that seemed to drift on the air. "Help us," it breathed, pulling at my heart. "Please." I felt my body move without thought, drawn deeper into the darkness. Emily grabbed my wrist, pulling me back. "Please, don't." Before she could finish, I pushed through another door, the source of the cries tugging me in. But when I stepped inside, the room was empty. Just chairs and an old, dusty bed. "Nothing else here," I yelled, frustration seeping in. Then where the door slammed shut behind us, the sound thunderous in the silence. I whipped around, heart pounding, just as the cold presence enveloped us. And then, from the corner, I felt it, a dark shape moving closer. I had thought we were alone, but the darkness had other plans. "Emily, we need to," but it was too late. The shadows lunged. I stumbled back as the darkness swirled around us, pooling like ink against the walls. Emily's grip tightened on my wrist as we both gasped in fright. The weight of despair crashed into us, heavy and suffocating. I fought against the urge to flee, but the pull of the void threatened to drag us under. Break the door. I shouted, panic flooding my voice. But Emily stood frozen, terror painted on her face. It won't help. They want us here. Her eyes darted to the corners, shadowed figures looming just out of reach. I had no idea what she meant, but it rang true. Suddenly, an anguished voice broke through the suffocating silence, "Help me." It echoed, filling the room and resonating deep within my bones. My heart raced, desperate to respond, yet I could feel the cold fingers of fear closing around me. "Can you hear it?" I asked Emily, but her eyes grew wider, and she shook her head. "It's not just a sound," I pressed on, "we have to find whoever is in trouble. It's why we're here." Just as I finished, the shadows enveloped the corners, swirling towards us. My feet resisted, glued to the ground as a figure materialized from the darkness, flickering like a faulty bulb. I squinted, its form becoming clearer. It was a child, tears streaming down their face, hand outstretched. "Help," they whimpered, echoing the same word that hung in the air like a smoky fog. "Is this real?" I croaked, stumbling toward the apparition. "Or is this just more of your tricks?" The child recoiled, dissolving back into the dim light. "You can't stay," they whispered. And with that, they sighed and vanished into the shadows. I turned to Emily, but then I felt a rush of cold air pushing against my body. The darkness thickened sharply, and I realized we were caught in its web. "Run!" I screamed, yanking Emily's arm. I darted towards the door we had entered, slamming against it with all my weight. But it wouldn't budge. We were trapped. "Do you remember that nurse, the one you called out for?" Emily's voice trembled. "Why would she disappear? Where are the others?" A crushing wave of dread washed over me as realization set in. They weren't just taken, they were swallowed by this place. In that moment, I felt an intense heat radiating behind me. I turned to see the shadows coalescing, shifting into a mass of swirling darkness, taking on the form of anguished faces, patients, nurses writhing in agony. They reached out toward us, sorrow and fear etched into every feature. "Please, love us," they cried, voices overlapping until it was a cacophony of desperate pleas. I clutched Emily's hand tighter, fireworks of uncertainty sparking in every direction. "Are we too late?" I shouted, but my voice was swallowed by the torrent of despair. "Help us!" The voices echoed again, the darkness pushing forward, consuming all light. I had to find a way out before it pulled us down too. "No!" I yelled, retracing my steps to the back of the room, feeling the walls constrict around us. We couldn't let ourselves sink into their pain, we had to escape. "If we can reach that window," I said, spotting a sliver of moonlight glinting at the far side of the room. "It's just enough space." As we began to make our way, the whispers grew louder and angrier, shadows clawing at our bodies, the air growing thicker. I could feel the heaviness of loss in every breath I took. "Don't look back," I urged Emily, propelling us forward with sheer willpower. Each step felt like wading through molasses. But deep in my heart, uncertainty gnawed on me. Who were they, those lost souls wandering this hospital? Were they ever allowed to leave? A voice inside whispered warnings, urging me to heed the shadows, but I couldn't afford to listen. At last, we reached the window, pushing our way to the narrow opening framed in desperate light. I could almost taste freedom. One last sprint to escape this nightmare, just a few more feet. I reached for the window, and before I could hesitate, Emily pulled me through, the rush of cold air and freedom enveloping us. But as we slipped into safety, a loud crash reverberated through the room behind us. The darkness surged forward like an angry wave, crashing against the window frame. With one last breath, we stumbled into the cool air of the night, falling onto the dewy grass below. I gasped as the weight lifted from my chest, and with it, the whispers faded into the distance. We had made it. But as I stared into the hospital, its windows darkened and empty, a deep-seated anxiety rooted itself in my mind. What about the others still trapped inside? I looked to Emily, whose face mirrored my thoughts. We breathed in the cool air, but behind us, Riverside General stood ominous and brooding, its corridors held terrible truths we might never understand. I could still hear faint echoes of whispers lingering on the wind, taunting me with the question, could it ever truly be over? As we walked away, I knew I would never return to that place again. But deep down, I also knew the shadows weren't finished with us yet. They lingered in the corners of my mind, reminding me some questions might never find their answers.